Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie watching the stars through the main view screen. The heavy cruiser had been patrolling the Outer Rim territories for 3 weeks now, and the crew was getting restless. Space was vast and empty out here where the known galaxy ended and the unknown began. Morrison liked it that way, though, because it gave him time to think about humanity's place among the stars. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the various consoles. Lieutenant Amy Peterson sat at the communications station running her daily checks on the long-range sensors. Sergeant Tony Martinez was reviewing security protocols at his tactical station while Corporal Lisa Davis monitored the ship's defensive systems. It was routine work, but Morrison knew that routine could change in an instant out here. Morrison had been a starship captain for 15 years, and he had seen humanity grow from a single-world species to a major power in the galaxy. The other alien races called humans Deathworlders because Earth was such a dangerous planet compared to their peaceful homeworlds. Most alien species evolved on worlds with gentle weather and few predators. Earth was different, with its violent storms and deadly creatures that had shaped humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. "Captain," Peterson called out, suddenly breaking the quiet of the bridge, "I'm picking up something strange on the emergency frequencies." Morrison turned from the view screen and walked over to Peterson's station. The young officer had been with the Valkyrie for 2 years, and she was one of the best communications specialists in the fleet. If she said something was strange, then Morrison paid attention. "What kind of strange, Lieutenant?" Morrison asked as he looked at the data flowing across Peterson's screens. "It's not using any standard galactic protocols, sir," Peterson replied while adjusting the signal filters. "The transmission is coming from somewhere beyond the Kepler 442 system, and it's definitely not human or any known alien language." Commander Ben Rodriguez walked over from his position at the navigation console. Rodriguez had been Morrison's second in command for 5 years, and the two men worked well together. Rodriguez was calm under pressure and had a good tactical mind, which made him perfect for deep space patrol missions like this one. "How far out is that system, Commander?" Morrison asked without taking his eyes off Peterson's readouts. "About 6 hours at maximum burn, Captain," Rodriguez replied after checking his charts. "It's right at the edge of our patrol zone." Peterson continued working on the signal, trying to clean up the static and interference. The transmission was weak and full of gaps, but she could tell it was definitely a distress call. The tone of the voice was unmistakable, even though the language was completely unknown. "Got it, sir," Peterson announced as the ship's universal translator finally locked onto the signal. Patching it through to the main speakers now. The bridge fell silent as the alien voice filled the air. It was melodic and musical in a way that human voices could never be, but underneath the beauty was pure terror. The universal translator struggled with the unknown language, but managed to pick out fragments of meaning that chilled everyone who heard them. "Help us!" the voice pleaded across the vast emptiness of space. "We are dying here, and our children cry in the darkness. The monsters have come from the void between stars, and they take our people. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we beg you to help us. We have no weapons and no way to fight these creatures. They are machines of death and destruction, and they show no mercy to the young or old." The transmission continued for several more minutes with the same desperate plea repeated over and over in different ways. Morrison listened to every word, feeling the weight of the alien's fear and desperation. He had heard distress calls before, but nothing quite like this. Most species in the galaxy were advanced enough to handle their own problems, or they had allies who could help them. This sounded different, like whoever was calling had nowhere else to turn. "Any idea who sent this message, Peterson?" Morrison asked when the transmission finally ended. "Negative, sir," Peterson replied while running the voice. "Patterns through the ship's database. The computer doesn't recognize the language or the transmission method. Whoever they are, they're not in our files." Lieutenant Carl Hughes looked up from his position at the tactical station where he had been monitoring the long-range sensors during the transmission. Hughes was young, but he had sharp eyes and good instincts when it came to reading sensor data. Captain, I'm picking up some massive energy signatures from the direction of that transmission. Hughes reported with concern in his voice. Whatever's happening out there, it's big. The energy readings are off the charts. Morrison studied the tactical display that Hughes brought up on the main screen. The sensor data showed multiple large objects moving in the Kepler 442 system along with weapon discharges and explosions. It looked like a full-scale battle was taking place, but the energy signatures didn't match anything in their databases. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, fleet regulations say we should report this to command and wait for orders before investigating unknown situations. Morrison nodded because Rodriguez was right about the regulations. The smart thing to do would be to send a message back to Fleet Command and let them decide how to handle this situation. But Morrison also knew that help might arrive too late for whoever had sent that desperate plea for assistance. The captain looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all experienced spacers who had joined the fleet to explore the unknown and protect human interests in the galaxy. But Morrison knew they were also the kind of people who would want to help someone in trouble regardless of the risks involved. Morrison made his decision based on 15 years of command, experience, and a lifetime of human instincts. The galaxy was full of species who would debate and discuss and form committees before taking action. Humans were different because they acted when action was needed. Set course for Kepler 442 maximum burn, Morrison ordered as he returned to his captain's chair, and Peterson sent a message back to Fleet Command informing them of our situation and our intentions. Aye, sir, came the chorus of responses from around the bridge as the crew jumped into action. The Valkyrie's engines roared to life, pushing the heavy cruiser toward whatever waited for them in the Kepler 442 system. Morrison felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders as his ship raced through space toward an unknown danger. He didn't know what they would find when they arrived, but he knew one thing for certain. When someone called for help, humans answered that call, no matter what the cost might be. The planet Sanctuary had once been the most beautiful world in this part of the galaxy. Crystal spires reached toward the purple sky, while floating gardens drifted between the towers like clouds made of flowers and green leaves. The Zelani people had built their civilization around harmony and peace, creating cities that looked like works of art rather than places where millions of beings lived and worked. Elder Counselor Tisara stood in the underground shelter watching the destruction of everything her people had built over thousands of years. Through the crystal windows, she could see the dark ships of the Void Reapers moving across the sky like a plague of metal insects. Their weapons fired constantly, turning the beautiful spires into rubble and ash. The floating gardens burned and fell from the sky like dying stars. The Zelani had never known war because their world had never produced the kind of violence that shaped other species. They were healers and teachers and artists who spent their lives creating beauty and knowledge. Their greatest achievement was the Grand Medical Archive that contained the genetic information and healing techniques of over 1,000 different species. It was this knowledge that the Void Reapers had come to steal. Elder Counselor, called Dr. Malthus from across the shelter, we have more wounded coming in from the surface raids. Tisara nodded and moved toward the medical area where dozens of injured Zelani lay on makeshift beds. The wounds were unlike anything their healers had ever seen because the Void Reaper weapons were designed to capture rather than kill. The machines wanted their victims alive for harvesting and processing. The children were the worst, affected because they were the primary targets. The Void Reapers seemed to understand that young Zelani had the purest genetic material and the strongest connection to their people's natural healing abilities. Whole nurseries had been emptied as the mechanical hunters swept through the cities, taking every child they could find. How many more are still out there? Tisara asked Dr. Malthus as they worked together to treat a young Zelani whose arm had been damaged by a harvester probe. We estimate at least 10,000 children are still trapped in the ruins of the capital city, Dr. Malthus replied with tears in her large golden eyes. The machines have them surrounded and we have no way to reach them. The Void Reapers had appeared in the system 3 days ago without any warning or attempt at communication. Their ships were massive angular things that seemed to absorb light itself, making them look like holes cut out of space. The Zilani had tried to communicate with them using every language and protocol in their databases, but the machines had responded only with violence. The attack had been swift and overwhelming because the Zilani had no weapons or military forces to defend themselves. Their ships were designed for exploration and medical missions, not combat. Within hours, the Void Reapers had destroyed the orbital stations and landed their harvester units on the planet surface. Tusara remembered watching from the council chambers as the first harvester ships descended from orbit. They moved with mechanical precision, landing in perfect formations around the major cities. Then the hunter-killer units had emerged from their ships like spiders from an egg sac, and the real nightmare had begun. The hunter-killers were designed for one purpose, which was to capture living beings for processing. They moved on multiple mechanical legs and had sensors that could track any form of life from kilometers away. Their harvester arms could inject paralysis chemicals or energy restraints to subdue their targets without causing fatal damage. "Elder Counselor," called young Veltar from the communications station. "I'm still trying to broadcast our distress signal, but I don't think anyone is receiving it." The Zilani had been sending out emergency transmissions for 2 days now, but they had received no response from any of the known galactic powers. The Galactic Council was too far away to provide immediate assistance, and most other species would need weeks to organize any kind of rescue mission. The Zilani would all be dead or captured long before help could arrive through normal channels. Tusara walked over to where Veltar was working with the long-range transmitters. The young technician had been broadcasting their plea for help on every frequency and in every language their computers knew. It was a desperate hope, but it was all they had left. "Keep trying," Tusara told him gently. "Someone out there might hear us and choose to help." Above their underground shelter, the battle for the capital city continued as the Void Reapers systematically worked their way through every building and structure. Their sensors could detect Zilani life signs through almost any barrier, so hiding was only a temporary solution. The machines were patient and thorough, and they would eventually find everyone who remained on the planet's surface. The Void Reapers seemed to know exactly what they were looking for because they headed straight for the medical facilities and genetic research centers. They ignored the art galleries and music halls that the Zilani valued most, focusing only on the biological treasures that could advance their unknown goals. Dr. Melthus had managed to evacuate some of the most critical genetic samples from the Grand Medical Archive before the machines reached it. She carried the irreplaceable data in a portable storage device that represented thousands of years of medical knowledge gathered from across the galaxy. If the Zilani died, at least their legacy of healing might survive. "The children in Sector 7 are calling for help," reported another technician monitoring the local communication networks. "The machines have found their hiding place and are moving in to capture them." Tusara felt her heart break as she listened to the frightened voices of Zilani children calling for their parents across the emergency channels. There were hundreds of them scattered throughout the ruined city, hiding in basements and damaged buildings while the hunter-killer searched for them. With mechanical determination, the Zilani had tried to organize rescue missions, but they had no experience with combat or military tactics. Every group that ventured onto the surface was quickly detected and captured by the Void Reaper patrols. The machines were simply too advanced and too numerous for the peaceful Zilani to fight against. "Elder Counselor," Veltar called out suddenly, with excitement in his voice, "I'm getting a response to our distress signal." Tusara rushed back to the communications station where Veltar was working frantically to clean up an incoming transmission. The signal was strong and clear, which meant it was coming from somewhere relatively close to their system. "Can you identify the source?" Tusara asked as she watched the alien symbols appear on Veltar's screen. "It's not in our databases," Veltar replied while running the signal through their translation programs. "But the transmission protocols are very advanced, and the signal strength suggests they have powerful equipment." The response message was brief, but it carried more hope. than anything the Zelani had heard in days. The alien voice was strange and harsh compared to the musical tones of Zelani speech, but the words were clear enough when translated. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Valkyrie," the message said. "We received your distress. Call and are en route to your system. Hold on, help is coming." The used Valkyrie dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and immediately began scanning for threats. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge watching the tactical displays fill with contact signatures that made his blood run. Cold, dozens of massive alien ships surrounded the planet like vultures waiting for something to die. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Carl Hughes from his tactical station. "I count 57 hostile contacts, sir, and they're all bigger than us." Morrison studied the sensor readings with growing concern. Each of the alien ships was at least twice the size of his heavy cruiser, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in the fleet databases. These were not ships built by any known galactic civilization. "Any response to our hails, Peterson?" Morrison asked his communications officer, who was trying to establish contact with either the planet or the alien fleet. "Negative, sir," Peterson replied while adjusting her equipment. "The aliens aren't responding to any standard protocols, and the planet is barely transmitting. I'm getting some very weak signals from underground locations, but the surface seems to be completely under enemy control." Commander Rodriguez moved to stand beside Morrison's chair as they both studied the tactical situation. The alien fleet was positioned in a perfect blockade formation around the planet, preventing any ships from approaching or leaving. Their movements were precise and coordinated like a machine army rather than living beings. "Sir," Hughes called out from his station, "I'm detecting multiple energy weapon discharges on the planet's surface. It looks like a full-scale ground assault is in progress." Morrison felt the familiar weight of command pressing down on his shoulders as he realized the scope of what they were facing. The Valkyrie was a powerful warship, but she was just one ship against an entire invasion fleet. Any rational captain would retreat and call for reinforcements, but Morrison knew that help would arrive too late for whoever was calling for assistance down on that planet. "Peterson, patch me through to Fleet Command emergency frequencies," Morrison ordered as he made his decision. Lieutenant Peterson worked quickly to establish a connection with the nearest fleet communication relay. The message would take several hours to reach Earth, but it would alert Fleet Command to the situation and hopefully bring reinforcements. Morrison just hoped they would survive long enough for help to arrive. "Channel open, sir," Peterson reported. Morrison stepped forward and spoke clearly into the communication pickup, knowing that his next words would change everything. "Fleet Command, this is Captain Morrison aboard the UES Valkyrie reporting a code red emergency in the Kepler 442 system. We have discovered an unknown hostile force conducting a full-scale invasion of an inhabited world. Estimated enemy strength is 50 plus capital ships of unknown design and capability. We are moving to assist the defenders and request immediate reinforcement by all available fleet assets." Morrison out. The captain turned back to his crew and saw determination on every face. They all knew the odds they were facing, but none of them suggested retreat. This was what they had trained for and what they had sworn to do when they joined the fleet. "All hands, this is the captain," Morrison announced over the ship's internal communication system. "We are about to engage a hostile force that outnumbers us 50 to 1. The enemy is attacking defenseless civilians on the planet below, and we are the only thing standing between them and complete annihilation. I won't lie to you about our chances, but I will tell you this. We are human beings, and human beings don't abandon people who need our help." The response from his crew was immediate as damage. Control teams rushed to their stations and weapon crews began final preparations for combat. The Valkyrie might be outnumbered, but she was crewed by humans, and humans had never learned how to give up. "Hughes, bring us to battle stations and charge all weapons," Morrison ordered as he settled into his command chair. The bridge lighting shifted to red as the ship's combat systems came online. Energy readings spiked as the plasma cannons charged and missile tubes loaded their deadly cargo. The Valkyrie's shields activated. Creating a protective barrier around the hull that shimmered like heat waves, Morrison studied the tactical display, one more time looking for any advantage he could find. The alien ships were massive and powerful, but they were arranged in a static blockade formation that might work against conventional enemies. Humans, however, were anything but conventional. "Rodriguez, plot us a course through their formation," Morrison ordered. "Maximum acceleration and prepare for evasive maneuvers." "Sir, that will take us right through the middle of their fleet," Rodriguez pointed out. "We'll be taking fire from every direction." Morrison smiled grimly as he watched his crew prepare for what might be their final battle. "Exactly, Commander. They won't expect anyone to be crazy enough to charge straight at them." The Valkyrie's engines roared to full power as the ship accelerated toward the alien fleet at maximum burn. The human warship moved like a predator closing in for the kill rather than prey trying to escape. This was not how most galactic species fought wars, but humans had learned their tactics in the brutal evolutionary crucible of Earth. "Enemy ships are powering weapons," Hughes reported as proximity alarms began sounding throughout the bridge, multiple targeting locks detected. Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as the first alien weapons fired. Beams of dark energy lanced through space where the Valkyrie had been seconds before, but the human ship was already somewhere else, moving in patterns that defied conventional tactical thinking. "Return fire," Morrison commanded, and the Valkyrie's plasma cannon spoke with the voice of human defiance. The battle erupted around them as more alien ships turned to engage the single human vessel that had dared to challenge their entire fleet. Energy beams and missile salvos filled the space around the Valkyrie as Hughes fought to keep their weapons locked on target, while Rodriguez threw the ship through maneuvers that would have killed any other crew, but humans had evolved under crushing gravity and violent weather that had taught them to survive things that would destroy other species. What looked like impossible maneuvers to alien minds were just another day at the office for a human crew. "Direct hit on the lead alien ship," Hughes reported with satisfaction in his voice. "Their shields are down and we're detecting secondary explosions." Morrison allowed himself a moment of hope as he watched the tactical display. The Valkyrie was holding her own against impossible odds, but this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Lisa Shang was receiving his emergency message and making preparations to bring the full might of the human fleet to bear. The aliens were about to learn what happened when you threatened innocent people while humans were watching. Admiral Lisa Shang stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan watching hyperspace collapse around her massive dreadnought as the human fleet arrived in the Kepler 442 system. The sight that greeted them was both inspiring and terrifying as captain. Morrison's lonely ship continued its desperate battle against the alien invasion force. "Signal from the Valkyrie," reported Communications Officer Rachel Brown. "Captain Morrison reports heavy damage, but they're still fighting." Shang studied the tactical display showing dozens of alien ships surrounding the planet while Morrison's cruiser danced between them like a single warrior fighting an entire army. The Valkyrie's hull was scarred and her shields were failing, but she continued to fire at every target within range. "All ships attack formation Delta," Chang commanded into her fleet communications system. "Target the alien vessels and show them what happens when they threaten innocent people." The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace was unlike anything a galaxy had ever assembled for a rescue mission. The UES Thunderbolt under Captain Nick Cooper led a squadron of heavy cruisers, while Commander Kate Sullivan's carrier UES Stormraven launched fighter wings that swarmed toward the alien ships like angry insects. Captain Cooper opened fire first with his ship's main plasma batteries, sending streams of superheated energy into the nearest alien vessel. The enemy ship staggered under the impact as its dark hull began to glow and crack from the sustained bombardment. "This is for threatening children," Cooper muttered as he watched his weapons tear through the alien ship's defenses. Commander Sullivan's fighter squadrons reached the alien formation seconds later, with Lieutenant Danny White leading the attack. The human fighters were small and fast compared to the massive alien ships, but they carried weapons designed to punch through heavy armor at close range. "All fighters, this is White leader. Danny transmitted to his squadron. Pick your targets, and make every shot count. These machines picked the wrong species to mess with. The battle space filled with plasma fire and missile trails as the human fleet engaged the alien invasion force with the fury that had made humanity feared throughout the galaxy. The aliens had superior numbers and technology, but they were facing an enemy they had never encountered before. Admiral Chung watched with satisfaction as her fleet systematically dismantled the alien blockade. Human warships moved in ways that defied conventional tactics, using maneuvers that would have crushed the crew of any other species. But humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they had learned to survive things that destroyed other beings. "Ma'am," called Tactical Officer Paul Henderson, "we're receiving transmissions from the planet's surface." "It looks like Captain Morrison managed to get a ground team down there." Chang nodded as she watched Morrison's ship continue its battle despite severe damage to multiple systems. The man was either completely insane or the bravest captain in the fleet, and Chang suspected it might be both. Either way, he had bought them the time they needed to arrive and turn the tide of battle. Down on the planet's surface, Morrison led a small team of Marines through the ruined Crystal City searching for survivors. The devastation was unlike anything they had ever seen, as beautiful spires lay shattered and burning gardens fell from the sky like dying stars. "Stay close and watch for movement," Morrison told his team as they moved through the rubble-filled streets. Sergeant Tony Martinez carried a heavy plasma rifle while Corporal Lisa Davis covered their rear with her assault weapon. They had trained for urban warfare, but this was different from anything. In their experience, the first group of aliens they found was huddled in the basement of what had once been a medical facility. The creatures were unlike anything inhuman. Databases with golden skin and large eyes that seemed to hold depths of wisdom and kindness. But now those eyes were filled with terror as mechanical sounds echoed through the building above them. "It's okay," Morrison said gently as his translator converted his words into their musical language. "We're here to help you." The eldest of the aliens stepped forward with obvious fear, but also desperate hope. "You are the ones who answered our call," she said in accented standard that was easier for the humans to understand. "We are Elder Counselor Tessara of the Zolani Collective. Our children are trapped throughout the city and the machines are hunting them." Morrison felt his anger grow as he realized what they were facing. The alien invaders were not just conquering this world, they were harvesting its people like crops. The mechanical sounds above grew louder as something large moved through the building searching for life signs. "How many children are still out there?" Morrison asked while signaling his team to take defensive positions. "Thousands," Tessara replied with tears in her large eyes. "The machines take them alive for processing, and we have no weapons to fight back." The first hunter-killer machine appeared at the top of the stairs, moving on multiple mechanical legs like a giant spider made of dark metal. Its sensors scanned the basement while weapon pods extended from its body, preparing to capture or eliminate whatever it found down there. Martinez opened fire, first sending plasma bolts into the machine's central body. The hunter-killer staggered but kept coming as its adaptive shields adjusted to the human weapons. These machines learned fast, but humans learned faster. "Switch to armor piercing," Davis called out as she flanked the machine from the side. The battle in the basement was brutal but brief, as the three humans used tactics learned from Earth's violent history. They moved like predators, working together to bring down dangerous prey while the Zolani watched in amazement. They had never seen anything like human combat effectiveness. Morrison found himself face to face with the damaged hunter-killer as it tried to reach the cowering aliens behind him. The machine was twice his size and armed with weapons that could kill him instantly, but Morrison was a human and humans had been apex predators long before they reached the stars. The fight lasted only seconds as Morrison used his monomolecular combat knife to slice through the machine's processing core. The hunter-killer collapsed in a shower of sparks while its mechanical limbs twitched and went still. "Are there more of these things?" Morrison asked Tessara while his team checked the stairway for additional threats. "Hundreds of them throughout the city," she replied while staring at the destroyed machine. They came from the ships in orbit, and they know exactly where to find our people. Morrison activated his communication device and contacted the Valkyrie, which was still fighting in space above them. Peterson, this is the captain. Patch me through to Admiral Chang. When the connection was established, Morrison made his report with the sound of distant explosions echoing through the ruined city. Admiral, we have a ground situation here that requires immediate action. The aliens are harvesting the local population, and we need marine assault teams on the surface as soon as possible. Chang's response came back immediately despite the interference from the ongoing space battle. Understood, Captain. Marine companies from the Thunderbolt and Stormraven are already loading into dropships. Hold your position and protect those civilians. Morrison looked at the group of frightened aliens depending on him for protection and made a promise that would echo through galactic history. Don't worry. We're humans, and humans don't abandon people who need our help. The battle for Sanctuary reached its peak as Admiral Chang's fleet systematically destroyed the Void Reaper invasion force ship by ship. The alien machines had superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Human warships fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and raw aggression that overwhelmed the mechanical minds of their opponents. Captain Cooper's heavy cruisers had broken through the alien formation and were now hunting down the remaining ships, while Commander Sullivan's fighters swarmed around the massive enemy vessels like angry hornets. The space around the planet filled with debris and energy discharges as the tide of battle turned decisively in humanity's favor. Enemy command ship is attempting to retreat, reported Tactical Officer Henderson from his station on the Leviathan's bridge. Admiral Chang studied the tactical display showing the largest alien vessel trying to escape toward the edge of the system. The ship was nearly 3 times the size of her dreadnought and appeared to be the nerve center for the entire invasion force. All ships concentrate fire on that command vessel, Chang ordered. Don't let it escape to threaten other worlds. The combined firepower of the human fleet converged on the fleeing command ship, overwhelming its defenses in seconds. The massive vessel broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the darkness of space like a dying star. With their command structure destroyed, the remaining Void Reaper ships began to surrender or flee in confusion. Down on the planet's surface, Morrison's ground team had linked up with marine companies from the other ships and was fighting their way through the ruined capital city. The hunter-killer machines continued their grim work, but now they faced human marines equipped with the finest weapons Earth could produce. Lieutenant Danny White had landed his fighter in a makeshift landing zone and joined the ground assault with a squad of pilots turned infantry. The young man moved through the crystal ruins with the confidence of someone who had never learned to be afraid of impossible odds. "Contact front," called Sergeant Martinez as another group of hunter-killers emerged from a collapsed medical center. "Looks like they've got prisoners." Morrison could see the mechanical spiders dragging a group of young Zilani toward a collection point where other captured civilians waited for transport to the orbiting ships. The sight filled him with the kind of cold rage that had made humans the most feared warriors in the galaxy. "Take them down," Morrison ordered, and his Marines opened fire with weapons designed to penetrate the heaviest armor. The battle was swift and decisive as human combat tactics proved superior to mechanical programming. The hunter-killers were destroyed before they could harm their prisoners, while the captured Zilani were freed and escorted to safety by Marine medics. Elder Counselor Tisara had accompanied Morrison's team as they searched for survivors throughout the city. The elderly Zilani watched in amazement as the humans fought with a skill and determination that defied everything she thought she knew about warfare. "Your people fight like the ancient legends describe the first warriors," she told Morrison. As they moved through another section of ruined buildings, "We have stories of beings who could defeat any enemy through courage and strength of will." Morrison helped a group of injured Zilani children toward the evacuation point while his Marines continued their systematic sweep of the area. The young aliens looked at him with a mixture of fear and wonder, as if they couldn't quite believe that these strange creatures had come from across the galaxy just to help them. "Ma'am," Morrison replied to Tisara, "we're just people doing what people should do when someone needs help." Lieutenant Peterson's voice crackled through Morrison's communication device with an urgent message from the Valkyrie in orbit. Captain, we're picking up some strange readings from the disabled Void Reaper ships. The aliens are trying to communicate with us. Morrison paused in his rescue operations to consider this unexpected development. The Void Reapers had shown no interest in communication during their invasion, but now they wanted to talk. This could be a trap, or it could be something more important. Patch me through to Admiral Chang, Morrison requested while signaling his team to continue the evacuation. When the connection was established, Chang's voice carried a note of confusion that Morrison had never heard from the Admiral before. Captain, we've got a situation up here that doesn't make sense. The surviving alien ships are broadcasting what appears to be a surrender message, but they're also transmitting detailed technical data about their civilization. Morrison frowned as he tried to understand what this meant. Military forces didn't usually share technical secrets when they surrendered unless they were desperate for something more important than victory. What kind of technical data, Admiral? Morrison asked while watching his Marines load more rescued Zilani onto transport shuttles. Medical and biological information, Chang replied after consulting with her science officers. It looks like they're showing us their original biological forms before they became machines. Captain, these aliens aren't conquerors, they're refugees. The truth hit Morrison like a physical blow as he realized what they had stumbled into. The Void Reapers weren't evil machines bent on destruction. They were the last survivors of a dying race, trying desperately to find a way back to biological life. Admiral, are you saying these machines used to be living beings? Morrison asked while looking at the destruction around him with new understanding. That's exactly what I'm saying, Captain, Chang confirmed. According to their data transmissions, they converted themselves to mechanical form to survive the death of their homeworld millions of years ago. They've been searching the galaxy ever since for advanced biological knowledge that might help them reverse the process. Morrison felt his anger transform into something more complex as he understood the true tragedy of this situation. The Void Reapers had attacked the Zilani not out of malice but out of desperation. They had seen the advanced medical knowledge of the collective as their only hope for salvation. What about the Zilani? Morrison asked. Can their medical technology actually help these machines become biological again? Dr. Melthus, who had been listening to the conversation through Tisara as translator, stepped forward with excitement in her golden eyes. Captain, our genetic reconstruction techniques are the most advanced in this part of the galaxy. If these beings have preserved their original biological patterns, we might be able to help them. Morrison made a decision that would change the course of galactic history as he realized that this battle could end with something better than victory. Admiral, recommend we cease hostilities and open formal negotiations. Maybe we can find a solution that helps everyone. The weeks that followed saw the beginning of an unprecedented cooperation between three very different species. The Zilani provided their medical expertise while the Void Reapers shared their advanced manufacturing technology. Humanity provided the military protection and diplomatic framework that made the alliance possible. Captain, Morrison stood on the rebuilt crystal spires of Sanctuary 6 months later, watching human and Zilani children play together while former Void Reaper machines worked alongside organic beings to construct new medical facilities. The alliance between the three species had created something unprecedented in galactic history. Admiral Chang had been promoted to lead the new tri-species defense force, while Morrison served as the diplomatic liaison between Earth and their new allies. The combination of human military strength, Zilani medical knowledge, and Void Reaper technology had created a power block that promised to reshape the entire galaxy. The Deathworlder fleet had answered the call for help and discovered that sometimes the best victory was the one that turned enemies into friends. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but now it had protectors who would answer when someone called for help, regardless of who they were or where they came from.